Welcome to my next project. The project's pretty exciting. I'm kind of an old boomer, if you haven't noticed. And my first car I bought in 1975. I was 15 years old. It was one like this one, 6-cylinder and a 3-speed on the floor. I loved that car. The minute I had it, I was wanting something better. Same car, but bigger motor, 4-speed. At 15 years old, my car was only 6 years old. What was amazing in 1975, a 6-year-old car had cracked, faded paint, had rust in the quarter panels, had a hole in the floor, and I'm in a high desert climate. So these cars just did not hold up well, let alone in a rust belt. I just can't imagine how these did in a real salty environment. I'm in Salt Lake City. We have salt on our roads in the winter. So my car had obviously been used on the salt roads. So I wanted to restore that car, and I wanted to put a V8 in it and a 4-speed. There was a lot of things I wanted to do to it. The very first winter that I drove the car after I turned 16, I wrecked it. I put a big dent in the back end of the car. I put a big dent in the front fender of the car. I spun out in the snow. Didn't know how to drive a stick shift in the snow. So I restored the car and I made it absolutely beautiful. I lowered it. I was one of those during the 70s where everybody was jacking them up. I lowered mine down. I had chrome reverse wheels on it. Here's a picture of my car. Absolutely gorgeous. Everybody loved that car. I drove it for about a year after fixing it all up, and then I was broadsided by a drunk driver on the driver's side. Could have killed me. It was an Olds 442. Guy ran a red light, drunk. Back then, cops just gave him a ride home. After my car was wrecked and pretty much destroyed, the insurance company totaled it. I didn't want to let it go, so I decided to buy a parts car and rebuild mine. Well, the parts car was hit on the opposite side. After I got the parts car and it was a Rally Sport, I really wanted a Rally Sport. So I decided to fix my car up as the Rally Sport, and then with the parts car, it had such great bones, I decided to fix it too, and I bought another car, a third car, and I built the two, and here's a picture of the second car. So now, with having both of these, I really had the bug to get a convertible. I bought a 67 Camaro convertible that was just an absolute mess. It needed a lot of work. It had a lot of rust. It had a lot of dents. I bought another car that was a 67 SS RS, the 4-speed and a 350, and I was planning on building one car out of that one. It had been hit really hard on the rear. So just as I got started on building the 67 convertible, the ultimate car that I always wanted, a 69 Rally Sport convertible, showed up at a dealership. I was driving by the dealership. I saw the car sitting by the side of the building. I went in and I started asking about it. Come to find out, it was there. The guy was negotiating on trading it in on a Monte Carlo. And I mentioned to him, I said, I really want this car. If you're planning on trading it in, is there anything we can do? I could get this car at the trade-in value, get it away from Gus Paulo Chevrolet before you trade it in, and he agreed to do it. $1,500 for this car. Back in, that would have been 79, 80. Car needed a lot of work. Needed the top. It had a split in the interior. It had rust in one rear quarter panel. The paint was really, really bad. The grill was broken. It needed a lot of work. So we worked out a deal. He said, yeah, as soon as the Monte Carlo comes in, he special ordered it. I'll call you and I'll sell you the car. Didn't happen. His wife decided once they got the Monte Carlo, they could afford to keep it. They decided to keep the Rally Sport convertible. So I was brokenhearted, but I was bound and determined to find another one. I really wanted that car. Time went by, it was probably a year later. I got a phone call from the guy on that car, and he was willing to sell it to me, $1,500. He had seen my cars. He saw my green one. He saw my white one. He says, obviously, you're going to restore this car. I really want to see it restored. I want to see it restored back to the way it was original. I bought it, and I really wanted to make the car a burgundy car. Someday I wanted to restore it back to completely original, the original colors, everything about the car, right the way it would have been coming out of the factory. But at that time, I wanted a burgundy car, a black interior, and I painted it burgundy. Here's a picture of it at a car show. Right after this car show, a good friend of mine worked for a dealership, and they were doing a polyglycoat finish on cars. And he says, man, I could really make this color pop. Well, Ron Wagner, Ron's Body Shop, painted the burgundy paint for me. He put a polyurethane finish in that paint. The polyurethane hardener that he used didn't work with the polyglycoat to the point where the polyglycoat liquefied the finish. And the first time I washed it, I washed the finish completely off this car. It took all the gloss off. It felt like sandpaper. It was just this metal flake, rough finish. I was so disgusted and so upset. I threw a cover over it like this, and I stuck it in the front of my garage, and it sat like that for 4 or 5 years. After all those years, I was married, I had a child, ended up in a divorce. I decided that it was time to restore the car and do something with it. I wanted to restore it back to the way it was when it was brand new. I had the time since I was divorced. The car was in my father's garage. I would go after work. I would go on the weekends. Within 6 months, the car was completely restored to show condition, concourse, the elegance, trophies, you name it. I wanted it all. And this car became a trailer queen. To my surprise, after becoming a trailer queen, taking it to a few shows, it took all the fun out of the car. It wasn't fun to drive anymore. It was white knuckling. I was always worried about a rock chip. I was worried about the door ding. I was worried about somebody rear-ending me. It just wasn't any fun anymore. And life goes on. I ended up meeting a real sweetheart of a girl. I got remarried. We decided to have a family, and the car just didn't fit. It was too expensive to keep. It was hundreds of dollars a year just to keep it sitting in the garage and take it to a few car shows. And back then with a new family, just couldn't afford it. So I sold the car. Fast forward about 15 years, I ran into this car, and the guy that I sold it to had it sitting in his garage for 15 years. When I ran into him at a car show, he said it was only the second time he had the car out since he bought it from me. 15 years this car sat in a garage, and he only got it out twice. Fast forward again, I'm driving down the freeway, and this car pulls out in front of me on an on-ramp, and I was shocked. And I kept thinking, that has got to be my old show car. And here it is, pulling in front of me right on the freeway. So I followed him. I had to talk to him. He exited the freeway. He pulled into a gas station. I pulled in next to him, and I said, wow, I can't believe you have my car out. And he says, oh, you used to have a car like this? And I said, no, this is my old car. We got talking, exchanged phone numbers, tried to talk him into selling me the car. He wasn't ready to let it go. Didn't hear from him again. A year later, he calls me and said, how would you like to restore that car? And maybe even buy it. I really can't restore it. I've got too much going on to do a complete restoration on the car. I would be interested in owning the car again. but it doesn't really fit either. The more I got talking to my wife and thinking, okay, wouldn't it be fun to have the car again, depending on its condition, depending on what it looks like, depending on what it needs. It would be cool. Absolutely, it would be cool to have it again, but it just doesn't fit everything that I have going on in my life right now. So I told him, I said I would be glad to look at it. I'd be glad to work on it for you. He said there's a lot that the car now needs. He's been driving it quite a bit over the last few years, so it's really deteriorated. He wants to be able to get this car just functioning, driving, and to be able to depend on it and actually rent it out. I don't know about renting a car like this one, but that's what he wants to do. So I will show you this car after this long story. It is now in my garage. It is my next project. It is not my car. I'm doing this work for him so he can rent it. And man, has it gone downhill. It looks pretty good from a distance. From your point of view, it really doesn't look that bad, but it's a pretty exciting car. There you go. Looks pretty good from a distance. Let's do a walk around. It does have all the documentation. It had a lot of original tags that showed it is the real 69 RS. That rear spoiler didn't come on the car. That was given to me by a friend, and I just didn't have the nerve to say, no, I don't want this on the car. So I ended up putting it on, and I wished I hadn't have as soon as I put it on. I mean, it looks good, but it doesn't belong on this convertible. It's not what came on it. This is the original color, butternut yellow. The pinstriping on the side of the car, I was able to find the old GM factory specs on how that was painted on. So that is actually painted on the way the factory would have done it. You can see it's got some chips in it. The back window has some scratches in it, but it's in pretty good shape. But the top is shot. It is separating. It's separating on the inside as well as separating in some spots on the outside. It's pulling and splitting. So the top needs to be replaced. It does have some door dings, some chips. It has a raised rust area. Ron Wagner at Ron's Body Shop did this rust repair for me. And he's an old lead guy, so he welded in a patch panel and then leaded it. Well, rust got between the patch panel that he did and his lead, and that popped. And you can see there's a crack. That crack is actually in the lead. This rear quarter panel was rusted all around this lip, which was a common problem for these cars. So he welded on a new quarter panel for me. So this quarter panel has been replaced. And it was replaced with the original GM fender. The door, you can see, the hinges have settled. They've worn. They don't line up correctly anymore. You have to kind of lift it to get it to shut. But you can also see where it is sagged. There's a pretty good gap and a lip here that really should be adjusted. See, it's originally a 350 car. This does have the second engine in it. When this car was brand new, the story was the guy that I bought it from, he was the second owner. He bought it 6 months old. The car had been wrecked when it was just a few months old. It had been wrecked in the rear quarter panel on the driver's side, and at the same time she did something to the motor and the motor was bad, so they put a new warranty engine in it and they fixed the rear quarter panel and she traded it in. She didn't want to keep it. So the story is she traded in on another Camaro, and then he purchased it, and when she had the warranty work done on the car, she painted this bright yellow, canary yellow. And he drove it that way for a few years, and he was driving out to Wendover, Nevada with his wife, and he got stuck in a desert storm that sandblasted the car, ruined all the glass in the car, and ruined the canary yellow paint. So he painted it blue, and that's when I got it. And it was pretty tired paint by the time I got it. You can see the hood doesn't fit. The current owner was replacing the brake master cylinder. He set something down right here on the cowl, and then he closed the hood on it. And he sprung the hinge, maybe even bent the hinge. So that's something that I need to repair. You can see there's a few more chips, rock chips on the edge of the fender. A little rust that's creeping out around the trim. This door, you can see that stainless steel has got a dent in it. This door doesn't fit properly anymore either. The rubber around the rear window seal, that's gone, falling apart. The handle's falling off. This door is also sagged quite a bit. It's hitting as it drags going in. Looks like it got scuffed right there. But this quarter panel had been replaced just soon after the car was sold new, just a few months, so the story goes. And I'll show you a picture underneath the car of this drop panel where this quarter panel had been hit, and the truck drop-off panel is just really mangled, where they didn't do a very good job repairing that. But this is an original rosewood interior. The rosewood wheel did come on this car from the factory. Pretty rare option. Power top. The car did have the stainless trim package for the pedals, as well as the center piece on these. You can see this one's worn, so I need to replace that. The story is that this is still the original door panels, but he replaced the seat covers. And I don't think it was done correctly, because when you sit on it, it doesn't feel like it has enough support, like maybe some of the springs are broken. So that's something I'm going to look at. Supposedly this is the original back seat. The headrests have been replaced. They're not the correct headrest. You can see the top is falling apart on the inside liner. These rear windows, he said, don't work correctly anymore. He wants me to fix those. As you can see, a lot of chips in the paint. It's very, very faded, but this is a single stage paint, and with some color sanding and buffing, this should come right back to life and just be a brilliant, rich color. So I'm hoping I can I want to take this spoiler off and take it to a paint shop and have them match this color, and then I'm going to dab paint into all these chips and build it up, and then sand it off smooth, and then buff this car up, and hopefully I can save this paint. So apparently when he closed something in the hood and kinked that hinge, it also forced the hood forward, and it is now hitting against this front piece. So you can see a lot of chips. So here is the engine bay. It's got the wrong master cylinder. The headlight washers have been disconnected. Yeah, you heard me right. Headlight washers. This had windshield washers as well as headlight washers. In fact, you can see there's the little tubes for the headlight washers. Looks like he's disconnected them for some reason. That right there would have gone to the headlights. Right there, you've got a headlight washer there and a headlight washer there. Those headlight washers are on both sides. Pretty rare option. They only did them My understanding is they only did them on the Rally Sport. Now, if this works correctly, the Rally Sport was set up with a release right here on the fender. There's a air tank canister here. It's a vacuum canister. You would flip this switch. I don't want to break it. And it doesn't look like it's going to switch. But I should be able to slide that, and when you slide it all the way over, it will switch the vacuum so that the vacuum will come out of this canister and it will open the headlights. So I'll start it up and turn the headlights on and see if they open. I don't know if it works. But you can see pretty much the way the car was when I sold it. These valve covers are, my understanding, they were Z28, 69 Z28 valve covers. You could buy these at the dealership and put them on yourself. The intake manifold, the current owner changed to an Edelbrock. I had the original 2-barrel intake and the 2-barrel carburetor, as well as the original air cleaner when I sold the car. So I'm going to start it up and let's see if these headlight doors will open. They did close, didn't completely open. One's probably burned out. Well, that's definitely going to need to be addressed. These are vacuum actuated. They have a big vacuum canister right behind this plastic cover. All the vacuum lines run along here. You've got more vacuum lines here. You've got a vacuum line that runs the switch. So I'll have to check all the vacuum hoses. It's probably a leak in all the hoses. These hoses feel like they're getting pretty hard, so they're going to be leaking. But yeah, everything inside the engine bay is tired. Looks like for some reason he has used the washer bottle for an overflow instead of windshield washer fluid. The vents, the chrome on the vents needs to be redone. You can buy those. It does have the grab handle. The finish on the grab handle is coming off. It's heavily worn. Factory original AM radio. The heater knobs, you can see there's a couple of them missing. That heater switch panel is $360 to replace, but supposedly you can buy just the knobs, and so I plan on tearing that apart and replacing those knobs if I can to save it. This car originally came with the clock, another rare option. It came there in the center. Typically that would have just had a Camaro logo on that panel. The dash, you can see, is toast. It was starting to twist and warp when I sold the car. It is really bad now. So I'll buy a new dash and put it on too while I'm redoing the other parts of the dash. He wants me to completely restore this dash. You see the console. It has the horseshoe shifter and the seat belts that clip into the center console. He wanted me to repaint this console. I don't know if it's repairable. It's got a dent right there in it. It looks like it's cracked. Luckily you can buy these doors, so I'll talk to him about replacing that. These seat belts are heavily faded. They probably should be replaced. Still has the original tire pressure sticker on the inside of the glove box. That's pretty cool. Let's check out the trunk. You can see the inside of the trunk still looks really good. The original jacking instructions. The cocktail shakers are still here. 67, 68, and 69 Camaros for convertibles only. It has a cylinder that is full of liquid, has a big spring on top and bottom with a ball in the middle, and it absorbs the torque and twist of the car to keep it stable. But you can see the original houndstooth floor mat is still here and looks like it's in pretty good shape. Jack handle, spare tire. When I sold the car, it had the original white oval Firestone spare tire on it. So I was hoping it was still here, but I'm sure that tire wouldn't be any good anyway. The convertible top motor is just behind that panel. It works, it spins, but it doesn't change anything in the cylinders to make the top work. Looks like everything inside of this well looks good. I'd love to pull the padding up and see if the trunk floor is rusted, but you have to remove those cocktail shakers to be able to pull the pad up. You can see when I start it up, one side blows really rich black, but the other side doesn't. The other side's nice, clear, and clean. I'll have to do a compression test on the car and see if maybe there's some kind of a compression issue why one bank is real rich and the other bank isn't. So there you have it. That is my new project. For sure I'll be putting on a new top. There's a lot of things the car needs, but overall, with the good buffing, touching up all the chips, fixing the oil leaks and putting a new top on it. Oh yeah, fixing the the windows, adjusting the doors. Yeah, there's a lot I need to do to the car. So I owned this car for about 10 years. I believe I bought it in 79 and I sold it in 89. The first trophy I won with the car at the Autorama, I won first place. This was a trophy I won in 1986, and this is one that I won in 1987. It was in the Concours d'Elegance 3 times. Its first year, 1985, the car wasn't quite finished. It took second place in its class. The second year, it scored 96 out of 100. So the car was only 4 points from being perfect. And when I talked to the judges, the things that they docked it for was the dashboard had a wave in it, and it had radial tires on it. And this car came with bias-plied tires. So those were the only things that they docked the car for. It would have taken first place, but sitting next to this car was a 67, 68 Camaro Rally Sport that had 14,000 original miles on it and was absolutely flawless. They tied for first place at 96 points, and mine slipped into second because the judges came back and said, okay, this one's restored and that one's 100% original. So they gave him a half a point to bring him into first place. So it was really quite an honor to be able to compete against a car perfection. So definitely something to be proud of. In 1989, I sold this car just above book value since it had all the trophies and the awards. At the time, book value on this car in mint condition was $7,000. I sold it for $78.50, and I felt really good about that. I got all the money back that I put into it. Pretty amazing. Today, this car in its deteriorated condition Hagerty shows the value at right around $25,000 to $28,000. So the guy that bought it from me did very little to the car, even in its deteriorated state. He's made some good money on the car, but with restoring this car, getting it back on the road, you can't go wrong. It was a great investment, something you can enjoy. He could completely restore this car and still be money ahead, even if he's paid somebody to completely restore. Pretty amazing to have this car back in my garage after 30 years. I don't own it, but I just might own it again one day. I'll keep in touch. So I showed you all the top side of the car, everything on the interior. I didn't show you the underneath side. In the next video, I'll show you the underneath side. I'll show you everything that I'm planning on doing to the car, and I'll start tearing into it. I'm probably going to gut the interior and take the top off, do everything cosmetically, interior-wise, and then I'll work on exhaust and brakes and getting everything suspension-wise up to being safe to drive, and then I'll start working on the paint and the finish. I was noticing there's a dent here that I'll work out without having to repaint. We'll fix the rust. Stay tuned. A lot more videos to come. Appreciate you tuning in. Give me a like, share, subscribe, get the word out. I need subscriptions. I need a lot of views. Keep my channel going. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.